people really struggle with meeting people, even when they go out, because people just don't speak to each other. He told me that he has met the girlfriend of his friend, like of his best friend, only after they dated for over 10 months. And then I was like, oh my God, this is like so long. This is like as your friend would have hidden the girlfriend. There would be more people now than before that would say, oh, actually, I'm quite independent. I don't need so much time with my partner. And then you're like, oh, but actually a relationship works different. You spend a lot of time with your partner. But nowadays, there's many more people than before that would be also more independent in the relationship.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dating Beyond Borders podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have Elena, the founder of Match Maison, a matchmaking agency in Zurich, Switzerland, joining us. We'll explore the nuances of Swiss relationships, diving into why finding connection in Switzerland can be uniquely challenging. We'll also discuss the growing frustration with dating apps, its impact on the dating scene, and whether the number of singles in Switzerland has been on the rise recently. Elena brings a wealth of experience from working directly with clients, along with fascinating statistics to share. I'm so excited to have her here. So let's jump right in. Welcome, Elena.
Thank you so much, Marina.
Tell me, how would you describe the Swiss culture when it comes to dating and relationships? Is it really as tough as they say to connect with someone in Switzerland?
Yes, of course. So Swiss people, what we have to know, they really take very long time to get to know someone, and they also really take time to build trust. So in general, we can really say both in platonic and in romantic relationships, it takes time to get to know a Swiss person. They are very slow as well in dating. So they really go for this slow dating process, which can also be really good in dating in general, also for relationships. They are very reserved, so they take their time to get to know someone, and they are also very structured and planned. So when you go on a date with a Swiss person, they will always plan the date in very detail until the end of the date.
When you say slow dating, what does that mean exactly?
So it really means that a Swiss person would take time, for instance, also in terms of physical touch. So they will really wait until you feel comfortable to kiss, to hold hand, to be physical intimate with someone. So they really take time, but they also take time, for instance, to introduce you to your friends or to their friends, introduce you to their family. And last but not least, it takes really also time until they would invite you to their home. So it's really a slow dating journey and process.
Is it that Swiss people kind of feel a bit of hesitancy, with opening their heart to someone? Is it this more of a testing out culture? Like, okay, I like this person, but I really want to test out if this is a compatible person for me down the road. Do you think it's a factor that, has any relevance to any of these?
I think it's really both. So first of all, they will really take time to emotionally open up because they really want to make sure it's the right person. They don't want to reveal any personal information to a kind of stranger. So they really take time to open up to someone emotionally. But they would also be very reserved because their culture, it's like really rooted in their culture, and they would feel uncomfortable to provide a lot of personal or emotional, deep information of themselves.
Interesting. It does sound a lot like people are a bit more pragmatic when it comes to dating choices, as opposed to, let's say, if you go to somewhere like Colombia or Brazil, where people just in the heat of the moment, will say words like, I love you, or, I'm really attracted to you. Let's just go for it. Let's just try this out. It's less about going with the flow, and it seems more about pre-planned approach to dating and actually like planning out their life well in advance, right? So it seems like Swiss mentality seeps into the romantic relationships as well with this whole planning culture.
Yes, it's definitely a planning culture. And also when they actually plan a date, they would really plan it meticulously from the beginning to the end. They don't want to do anything wrong. And they also want to make sure that they provide the best possible date experience to the date. So they will always make sure that you feel also right, but then also take it slow and also plan it, structure it. So it's really rooted in their culture.
When you say plan a date, does it mean that the man plans the date? Does it mean that both of them kind of plan out the date? Are there any rules for that?
Yes. So in particular, also for the first date, here it is typically the man who would plan the first date. It's very traditional in terms of dating roles, like for women and men. So the man would plan the date, would organize the restaurant, would ask the women also out for the date. This is all a very typical and still traditional role here.
Does it differ whether or not you live in the German part of Switzerland, the French part of Switzerland, the Italian part of Switzerland?
Yes. So I believe, in particular in the German-speaking part, it's still very traditional, and also in the French part, like in whole Switzerland. But nevertheless, of course, it is also influenced by, first of all, the expats, but then also people say and tend to say that in the French-speaking part, also in the Italian-speaking part, people are more open in general. So they would not be as reserved as in the German-speaking part, in the French part. So it's a little bit more openness also in the dating scene.
Okay, so let's say the man plans this whole date, which I think sounds really great. I actually didn't expect that to be the case because from what I know, in the surrounding countries around Switzerland, it's not as old fashioned anymore. Let's say, for example, in
Yes.
Germany, like there's no such thing. I feel like it's kind of 50-50, it can depend so much. But does that also mean that it's more common for the man to pay on the first date?
Yes, this for sure. So I guess also even if the men would not pay on the first date, the women wouldn't go on another date. Women really also expect the men to pay for the first date, and Swiss men also want to do that. So it's really rooted also in their culture. I guess also a little bit when we look later in the relationship, it's still more this very traditional role is still more accepted than in other countries. Nevertheless, the women will also have a career and will also be really independent, but they still expect the man to pay for the first date, and men also do so.
And what should someone know when they're moving to Switzerland about, building these connections here, whether romantic or platonic connections?
So first of all, I would say it's important to really respect the personal space of Swiss people, because for Swiss people, it's very important to guard that privacy. So for instance, if you would ask questions, like very personal questions about trauma, childhood trauma, or also even your salary. So there's really no-go questions that you wouldn't ask a Swiss person on a first date or even in the beginning of dating. It's really important to respect those boundaries. And then, of course, as well, Swiss are very punctual. So it would be very disrespectful if you show up to the date late. And punctual even means for Swiss people to show up a little bit early. So really be 5 minutes too early on time. This is the Swiss punctuality.
Yeah, you raise a couple of really great points. I mean, as someone who was born in Germany, you probably have struggled a little bit with the indirectness of the Swiss culture because Germans are known for their direct culture. And so I can imagine that it might be a little bit tricky for someone that comes from a more direct culture. Like I'm Eastern European original. I can imagine in Switzerland, I would have to hold back a lot because for us, it's really important to actually get really, really deep down in conversation from the get-go to talk about our childhood traumas, to talk about our family,
Yes.
and I feel like Swiss, they're known for being neutral. It's an ongoing joke, right?
Yes, exactly. This for sure. And also another point is for sure that the circles are very small here. So we also really have to know if you date in Switzerland, the circles are so small. So you would easily know anyone in a circle, and people are also very cautious in dating. So they wouldn't date someone from the same circle, because then they would be really a little bit afraid that if a breakup would happen, or for instance, as well, if the date doesn't work out or the relationship doesn't work out, they couldn't stay easily in the same circle, or they couldn't go to the same party again. So they are really very reserved and want to keep their privacy as well.
So seeing as how you had just mentioned that Swiss people don't like to form romantic connections within their friend circle, is there a way that Swiss people typically meet each other when it comes to romantic connections?
Yes. So the very typical way, also how most Swiss people would meet is really through personal network and through like the common contact. This would be 25% of Swiss people who are in relationships meet on like through personal connections. They really prefer this also due to their culture than meeting someone online, for instance. On the other hand, they would never meet someone, or really not very often meet someone in a bar or in public, because they don't want to interfere into your privacy. They don't want to bother you when you are in a bar, and they also don't want to approach someone like a stranger. So you wouldn't meet them in a bar, but for sure you would meet them through a personal friend or like a contact, a mutual contact.
And what was the percentage of people that actually go through dating apps? Do you have any statistics on that?
Yes, that would be around 1/5. We also know that most more younger people are on dating apps, so in particular Gen Z. And of course, it is also in general, meeting people online here is not as high as meeting people through mutual contacts, and is also lower online than meeting people from other countries. So from other countries, people would meet online more than in Switzerland.
Those statistics are very interesting, actually, because when we look at Europe, such a huge percentage of Europeans in general meet each other online, right? If you go to any of the neighboring countries, dating online is the most common way of meeting each other, from what I know. So it's very interesting that Switzerland is so different in that regard, and it's probably the fact that while there is a lot of information that you can put online, none of that is actually verified information, right? People can lie about their age, they can lie about their job, right? And there's no way
Yes.
that you can actually check that. Whereas if you meet someone through a friend, you already have certain information on hand about this person, which makes it a safer dating process. So I'm assuming that's why people prefer to go through their friends and their relatives, whoever, their network of people.
Yes, of course, it's a safer process in terms of all dating aspects, and also safety, security, really also guiding the privacy is so important for Swiss. And that's certainly also the case for this reason.
And what are the biggest struggles that people typically face when dating in Switzerland?
So the biggest struggle, in my point of view, is really that the first of all, to get to know the person, how you get to know someone. So because people wouldn't get to know someone in a bar, because men wouldn't approach you when you smile at them. And for an expat, this might be very unusual, because a lot of expats, they are used to men who approach them in a bar. But then on the other hand, also when you are later in the dating process, and when you're in a relationship with someone, then Swiss people, they might not show a lot of affection in public, because they really want to keep their privacy and their private space and personal space. And if you're used to a more to a culture, for instance, like also like the Southern culture, where it's very typical that you would show affection to your partner in public, it might feel weird and you might feel uncomfortable. But when you know it, you know, and then this also helps, of course, for mutual understanding.
Hey everyone, just a quick note to say that while I love putting these podcasts together each week, they do take a ton of time and effort. So if you're enjoying the show, please make sure to follow on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're tuning in, and give this podcast a 5-star rating to help it grow. This support really helps me keep improving the show's quality. Thank you, and back to the episode. Have you ever worked with any expats, any foreigners that struggle with dating in Switzerland? And have you heard any accounts of these situations where they feel like my partner is not, either vocal enough or tactile enough, or I just feel like kind of maybe alone in a relationship, or I'm not feeling like I'm getting that kind of affection from my partner?
So I wouldn't have said that I would know someone, but you just really see it in public. So that people wouldn't complain about it, or really recognize it. But when you're in public on a train or on a bus or in public in general, you would just recognize it in comparison to other countries, that couples are not so affectionate or close to each other in public.
Having lived in Germany, have you noticed the difference even there with people being a little bit more affectionate maybe?
Yes, for sure. Yes, they are more affectionate in Germany and would also approach you easier. So it's more easygoing culture. Of course, in comparison to other cultures, it's also not that easygoing, but in comparison to the Swiss culture, it is more easygoing in terms of dating.
Interesting. So you're a matchmaker in Switzerland. Have you noticed that matchmaking in Switzerland differs, if at all, from any of the other countries that you work with? Because as you've told me, you work with Germany and the UK for the most part, right?
Yes, exactly. So we work also in whole Europe, but mostly, yes, Germany, UK. So in general, I would say matchmaking is a very international industry. So also our clients, yes, we have Swiss clients as well, but we also have clients with other backgrounds, and they would also date across borders. So if they are based in Switzerland, they would also date someone from, for instance, Portugal, from Spain, or from another country. And then, of course, it is good to know also the culture of dating, and in particular also our whole Swiss culture, to really facilitate mutual understanding. But most people are very international minded, are also very open. So they can also adapt to a certain culture. And the matchmaking industry in general is very, very international as well.
Have you noticed a rise in people that are looking for matchmaking services? Because just going off of what I am experiencing at the moment, there seems to be awareness around dating apps. There seems to be kind of an ongoing loop with dating apps where you just feel like there's so much choice, but we're not getting anywhere. This is not personally tailored to actually what I want. This is all based on superficial attraction. And it just seems like people are stuck in this kind of dating app exhaustion. And it feels like at this time, I'm actually noticing people starting to branch out and try other ways, either dating offline or potentially, yes, looking for a matchmaker to set them up with someone that might be more fitted to them.
Yes, I think first of all, as you say, it's really the paradox of choice for the dating apps. So you have such an abundance, but then you don't know who can be right for you because there's so many people you could potentially date. And for matchmaking, it's the opposite. You really focus on quality instead of quantity. I believe in particular those people who are successful, who also really have the means and who really care about meeting someone who fulfills their criteria in terms of that they have the same values. Because when you have the same values with as someone else, as your partner, then it will also lead to long-term relationship success. And in particular, because of this, like also saving time, for instance, a lot of people are very busy with their career, and then they can really save time when they meet someone through a matchmaker. And of course, also here in Switzerland, it's very important to meet someone through a trusted source. So people regard matchmaker as well, similar to a friend. You really can trust then that the person you will meet will also be a trustworthy person, will be an honest person, which is also, of course, very important.
Okay, so say I'm a client of yours and I come to you looking for someone. And are there any questions? I'm sure that you have a list of questions that you ask, clients. But is there anything that you say to people like, don't be really particular about this? Like, don't be really particular about someone's age or where they work. Is there anything that is more? Are there any values that are more important than other values in finding a partner?
Yes, of course. So it's really most important are really the key life values. So these would be your beliefs around family. So how important is family to you? There's like questions, how often you want to see your family, or also how close you want to live to your family. Then also career. What are your beliefs around career, and what do you always believe for your partner? And a very important value is also health and fitness, because this will influence your lifestyle so much. If someone works out every day or doesn't want to meet someone who smokes, is a smoker, makes a lot like a crazy difference. And of course also then religion or finances. What are your beliefs around those values? In the end, you always have a look at your two most important values. So for instance, your two most important value would be health and then your family. And then you really want to find someone who values this as well, and who is also family oriented, who is also health driven, and also cares about an active lifestyle. But in the end, of course, you have also a lot of people who really have a whole checklist, and then sometimes you have to tell them, please go away from that checklist, because finding your person or your right partner is not about a checklist, and also not about the age. Of course, you can't always coach anyone to the degree that they will really focus more on the values, but this is always our goal.
How important for you is attraction in terms of when people come to you and they're like, look, Elena, all of these things are great, life values, whatever, but I want to feel like I want to rip the clothes off of this person. Like when I see them, I want to feel like I want to lunch with them. I want to kiss them. I want to make like I'm sexually attracted to them. What do you say to those people typically?
Yes, so there I always advise them to really have a look, how do the first 3 dates go? Because of course there's people that really expect that a spark will happen on the very first date, and this might not happen, and it can still be you're the right person for you. So the sparks, I think, is really something we learn from Hollywood or from the movies, but it doesn't necessarily happen for a really good and long-term relationship. And that's why I always advise people to really have a look how the first 3 dates go, because also attraction can even grow with time. And of course, there must be a certain attraction and connection as well. So if you don't feel any connection or attraction after dates 3 or 4, then I totally agree. It might not be the person you have a romantic relationship with. But I always advise also people to give it time and to really enjoy the slow dating process.
Have you ever had instances where you've matched a client with someone that they wouldn't normally be attracted to, and they've kind of rebelled against that and said, look, this is not my type, either not my age or not what I'm looking for. And then it did work out in the end?
Yes. So there I had also, I mean, several cases, but like for instance, one couple was like that, that she was not very convinced in the beginning, and she even didn't want to have a video call with that person. But then I convinced her to really tell her, yeah, it might be really a great fit for her, and she really should be open to get to know someone, because it's really always, you have open-mindedness is so important in dating. And then she went on that call, and it went really well for her. And she then afterwards she told me, oh, it's so great that you brought us together. And I mean, this couple is still together today. So it's really also about being open-minded and not judging someone based on a photo or based on some information that you would, for instance, relate to your ex or to another experience which was negative. So really always be open-minded.
Yeah, it's interesting, kind of the discrepancy between what we say we want and what we actually need in a relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of us, as they say, 90% of the women want 10% of the men, where they say, I want someone tall, dark, handsome with a really great job, and if you meet this person online, you definitely look at those qualities, like how tall is he? Is he over 6 feet tall? And those are the qualities that become more important. Whereas if you met someone in person, you might notice their charisma, the way they, listen to you, the way
Yes.
they move, the way they smile, all these factors that you just cannot see when you're dating someone online. And all of a sudden you fall for the person. I've also read books where it said, like, you know, actually, if you fall for someone who's not your type, the match is much stronger, right? Because you're not going with the type of person that you've always seen yourself with, right? You're going with someone that you're actually genuinely connected with on a very deep level, which is a lot more valuable.
Yes, no, for sure. I also just had a similar like experience recently when we had an event, and a client said he was really attracted to that one person. But then when he knew about her age, then he was like, oh, this person is already this age, so maybe I will not date her. But in real life, he would have dated her because he didn't know the age immediately. So it's really always, we have to ask ourselves, is the age really important, or is it just a number? So I think this is really true for dating.
When people come to you, are there a certain type of profile people? Are they of a certain age typically, or is there an experience that they've had where they no longer want to be on a dating app, or what? Because I think to go to a matchmaker, my assumption is that most of those clients would be women, because women are looking more for serious relationships, and maybe women see that dating online hasn't been really helpful in getting quality dates or getting into a relationship, rather than just having a lot of casual experiences. And so I can imagine that would be more, the highest percentage of that would be women. But I want to hear from your side. What kind of clients do you typically have?
Yes, so you're right. In general, the matchmaking industry would have more women. And also, for instance, for my clients, I would always hold them artificially even so that I really serve 50% men and 50% women. But otherwise, for instance, in the database, we have definitely more women because, as you say, women are looking more for serious relationship. Matchmaking is for serious relationships. And then, of course, in terms of age, we really believe that love has no expiry date. So we serve all kind of ages, like from the 20s then to their 70s. And of course, people would also be successful, would be international minded, which is really important to us. Also, really have this open mindset. And in most cases, are also, yeah, really great people. They are also attractive.
When women come to you looking for a partner versus when men come to you looking for a
Yes.
partner, is there any discrepancy in the qualities they're looking for? Let's say the first quality, let's say she has to be beautiful. Let's say, I imagine that's the one that, men will often go in with, like, I have to be sexually attracted to her. Versus, let's say women are like, he has to be financially sound. Do you notice there's a discrepancy what women are looking for versus what men are looking for?
Yes, so I guess there you're exactly right. Of course, there's also always exceptions, but for men, I would say yes. In general, men would be more driven also by the appearance and by the looks of someone, and then of course also have a look at the values. Whereas a woman, when she is really successful, she also wants to find someone who is at her level, also financially, for instance. So this is really important. But then on the other hand, we also have some clients who would even be matched without a photo, for instance. And so this means they don't know how the women will look like or how the men will look like. And then it can also work out, and it works out really very well for them as well. It always really depends on your mindset. But in general, I would say you're totally right. There is this difference on the focus on dating.
Is there a reason that they're matched without a photo? Is it because they're very visual and you're like, no, no, let's put the visuals aside and let's actually get to the core of attraction here?
Yes, so this is actually really because they really understand the value of matchmaking. So they really understand they want to find someone who really, first of all, matches their values, matches their personality, matches their lifestyle, and then they want to have a look, can they also connect, and are they also attracted to that person? But also a photo often cannot say if there's a chemistry between the two people. So it makes it very difficult to judge someone only based from a photo. For instance, I had a client, he said, oh, she's not smiling on the photo. Maybe she's not a happy person. And then I sent him a photo where she's smiling. So you see, some people, they really judge also based on a photo. And then you have those who say, oh, I don't need a photo at all, which is great as well.
Yeah, this reminds me of back in the day when we had classified ads and we had, people looking for partners back before online dating was even on the horizon, where people would say, I'm looking for a blonde woman, 5 feet tall. And it would just be like, it'd be like no photo, nothing, just very, very basic. And you always wonder, nowadays with just how important it has become, where you look at dating apps, which are the extreme opposite of that, which is basically all about appearance and very little in terms of information, especially if you go with apps like Tinder. Obviously, we have Hinge, which is a little bit more, there are more prompts there. There's more where you can get to know the person. But overall, dating apps are so much based on the superficial attraction. And it's no wonder that, yeah, people do meet through dating apps. I'm dating someone through a dating app,
Mm.
but you go through a lot of trial and error through dating apps, and it's just an ongoing uh, kind of fruitless process, right? Because you're not really understanding. It's not about the person, it's all about appearance on a dating app, right? So it's interesting that when you take away the appearance and you basically send people on a date, how people react to each other without this initial photo, right? Because how important, and I would be really curious even how many clients have said, no, I'm not going on a date without a photo. Like, there's no way you're going to force me to do this. and you've had to talk them into it and say, you know what, just give it a chance, like just try it out. You might be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, no, actually, there we don't convince so many people to go on a date. So if they would say no, then we would usually accept that, because then they already have the mindset that it cannot work out. So, I mean, there must be a certain interest always. So if we see there's a certain interest in the person, then of course we can talk them through. But also on the other hand, there's not so many people who would be matched without a photo. This is probably only 5%. So around 95% would be matched with a photo. They would see the photo as well. And then they go on a date. So it's not a complete blind date for them. And of course, they know a lot of criteria or a lot of personality traits. They know their lifestyle. They know really values. So they have a good, like a broad overview of someone if they meet someone through matchmaking. And then, of course, the chances are also higher that they really get along with the person, that there's really a connection with that person.
Yeah, it's a tricky subject. It's I've watched a few seasons of Love is Blind. I wouldn't say it's my favorite show, but you really
Yeah.
do see how people, when you can connect with someone through voice, you see
Yes.
that people feel like they're convinced that they're in love. And then you see the deterioration of their relationship when they actually see the person and they realize some of them are not physically attracted to this person. And so you see that unfortunately, still a lot of these relationships fail because you can be really, really attracted to someone's personality, but if you're not physically attracted, especially when it comes to the man towards the
Yes.
woman, right? A lot of times they just cannot convince themselves into this relationship. So I'm a believer that I think physical attraction is important for
Yes,
some
for
people more
sure.
than for other people. Like I know a lot of women that are just, it doesn't matter what he looks like as long as he's like this, like this, like this, and I feel a connection with him. I have a few friends like that.
Yes.
But most of us, physical attraction is a huge part of it's incredibly important, right, in a relationship. And as you said, for men more than for women, I can imagine that for
Yes.
men, women's status is not important at all. That's why a lot of men go for younger women, because in fact, they a lot of times don't even want the woman to have a status. Really, that's not as important. Although I can imagine in Switzerland that might differ somewhat. As I can, Germany, Switzerland, I feel like there's still an emphasis on the woman being independent, financially sound. Is that something that your Swiss clients or your German clients, do they look for women that are financially independent as well?
Yes,
The men, I mean? Mhm.
yes, no, this for sure. So they would definitely also look for someone who is also values their career, who has also passions on their own, and who is really financially dependent as well. They don't want to kind of feed the women. So they really want to find someone on their level, also intellectual level. So they really have someone with whom they can have an intellectual exchange and interesting discussion. This for sure, yes.
Have you noticed any difference between, let's say, your Swiss clients, you work with other countries in Europe? Have you noticed those set of requirements differing a little bit, or are they more or less the same?
So for our clients, it's really like this, that they want to find someone on their level intellectually. So that's why they wouldn't choose someone, for instance, who would not work. So they always want to find someone who has also their own career, who is also independent. But of course, there's always a focus. So this is like our clients, and probably there's other matchmakers or other dating apps where you can find other type of people. But our clients, they would want to find someone on the same level.
Okay, tell me, Elena, how would you describe dating among Gen Z in Switzerland? I mean, are there any kind of unique struggles that they face? And I mean, in general, like, where do you see this romantic landscape heading?
Yes, so for Gen Z, I think it's a little bit a paradox as well, because on the one hand, they are really very individualistic, so they really value unique personalities, and they also really value their own well-being and also their mentally well-being, their self-development. So they are really focused also on themselves and value unique personalities. We also have, for instance, like inclusion a lot in this generation, so they really live this inclusion. But on the other hand, they are also the generation that is most on dating apps than all other generations. So there, of course, then they have the paradox of choice, that they would find it very difficult, on the other hand, to actually find their partner, because they are on the dating apps and there they have this choice. So most I would say in general, they struggle with this, that they first of all focus on themselves, but then also really can't find someone because they have too much choice on the dating apps.
Yeah, it's a very interesting conversation because I think that, I mean, our previous generations, relationships were all about sacrifice and compromise and making it work no matter what. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
longevity was a part of our life in general. I mean, you had one job your entire life. You basically lived in the same city your entire life. You didn't, was no mobility. You didn't meet people from abroad. Like you stayed where you were, and relationships were meant for longevity, even if you weren't completely satisfied with those relationships. So it's not entirely positive. I'm not saying, oh, back in the day, how great our life was. But obviously, there were a lot of issues with that as well. But people, when they got into a relationship, and also I think because they got into relationships younger, they were a lot more willing
Yes.
to compromise, right? Your brain is a lot more malleable when you're younger. So you're not as fixed in what you want, and looking for the partner that's going to fully align with that, because you say, I've been on my own for 30 plus years. I don't need to mold myself into anyone else. Like I know exactly who I am, and I'm looking for someone who's going to match exactly, who's going to either go forward with me, or I'm going to look for someone else. And so I think it was in a way easier for our parents to make it work because they realized that relationships are not perfect. There's going to be sacrifice. They weren't looking for so many qualities within one
Yes.
person as we are now. I'm sure you know of Esther Perel, who talks about looking for so many qualities within one person that is incredibly difficult to find, where you're looking for a lover, a friend, someone predictable, yet someone spontaneous. I mean, how hard is it to find all of that in one person? Do you feel like Gen Z is kind of looking for, I don't want to say too much because it sounds almost negative, but are they unwilling to settle for less? And is that, do you think, an issue for people that are looking to find relationships?
Yeah. So I think on the one hand, it's really like that, as you say. So they really have this checklist and they are really pickier than ever. And also, even in the matchmaking industry, when we have a look like pre-COVID and post-COVID, people became pickier and pickier with their checklists. But on the other hand, also, Gen Z is focusing less on looks in general. So they really go back more to their values and also to this who someone really actually is. They really want to understand the person. They are really very open-minded and also value this respect, loyalty, honesty a lot more than other generations. And they are, of course, it makes it, on the other hand, also easier again to find someone who can be really suitable if you go away from the looks.
That's very interesting. I didn't expect that you were going to say that. I had assumed that Gen Z is going to be incredibly picky and very superficial. Why would you say, do you have any thoughts about why, uh, Gen Z is more open now to actually understanding who people are instead of just saying, okay, I want someone hot. I want someone who looks like this. Is there any reason as to why that is?
I guess it also has to do with the inclusivity, so that they really value also unique personalities and that they really want to include everyone, also, for instance, in terms of gender or sexuality. It really has to do with this mindset thought. So they really have this shift in their mindset to being open-minded towards, like, also someone who is different or someone who looks different. And this thought that they really value looks less, or like not as a focus on looks than other generations, is also, this comes from research. So it's not me who made up this thought. So it's really also proven by research.
Super interesting. And why do you say that, Gen Z after COVID, they have more of a stricter checklist? Is it that people have gotten used to being on their own and they're not willing to settle for just anybody? Or what's the reason behind that?
Yeah, it's really difficult to say as well that their criteria, they have more criteria now than before. So maybe it has to do with an overall shift, as you also say, that people delay, for instance, marriages. They focus more first on their career and they focus on themselves. And then they believe they all bring those great qualities and they want to find someone who exactly fits their ideal patterns or their ideal picture. And of course, this is not always possible because no one is perfect. So it's really about understanding what criteria do I really have to have, what values are really important for me, and on which values or on which criteria can I compromise.
Very interesting. Do you believe that people are lonelier than ever and, craving connection more than ever? Or do you feel that it's the opposite?
Yes, I definitely feel that people are lonelier than ever because, on the one hand, of course, we are all more interconnected. You have social media, and with social media, we are all connected, anyways. But on the other hand, people are lonely. This is also proven, I mean, in terms of the statistics, right? So, for instance, in Switzerland, we have now around 45% singles, and 20 years ago, it was 5% less. So really also the numbers of single increases, but I also think it's really in the mindset that people become lonelier because they feel not as connected as they feel when they have in-person meetings through the phone. So also like this technology makes it feel lonelier for someone or can make it feel lonelier.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think even noticing myself and how I've been for the past couple of years. I mean, it's so common to just leave voice messages and to text each other and to comment on social media. And you feel like you're in this way, you're communicating, you're connecting. But are you really? Because, I see my parents' generation, my mom, she still gets on a phone call every time she needs to talk to her friends. But, you know, I'm not a Gen Z, but even I'm not interacting with my friends over the phone as much, and I think it's just that we're so used to we have so many comforts in our homes, especially in our well-developed countries, where you don't need to leave your home to enjoy yourself. You can watch Netflix, you can play some video games, you can order Uber Eats. And why would you need to leave your home? I feel like I'm noticing more and more people in their 20s saying that they don't need a lot of interaction. They're kind of comfortable with just seeing a friend like once in a week, and that's more than enough. And I feel like a lot of people, and there's been some studies said that like people don't have so many friends. A lot of people barely even have one friend that they can confide in, which I think is an alarming statistic, right? Because we're getting such a communication fix from all the social media. I mean, I post a social media reel and instantly I get people on that reel. And that kind of makes me, I mean,
Yes.
that's exciting, but it's also scary. That means that people are on their phones 24/7, and the type of content that does really well online is also very relatable content where people are looking to connect with another human being through the means of social media. Also, what's interesting is the type of content that's becoming that really has gained a lot of popularity are people saying, I don't have any friends. And underneath that, I've seen comments upon comments of people saying, oh, I don't have any friends either. I'm in my 20s. My best friends are my parents, or I have my best friend is my dog, So
Yes.
I think it's just that for our parents or a previous generation, or even when I was growing up, like I'm in my 30s, I remember a time where you couldn't meet someone online. I met my ex-boyfriend on the street. I don't think anyone in their 20s would have the same experience these days unless they live in a country that is not well developed, but definitely not in Switzerland, definitely not in Canada. I mean, how many times do you actually even meet someone offline? That's a rarity these days. And so I think it's such an interesting conversation because we were just used to meeting people constantly. We were used to socialization. You needed to socialize. Otherwise, what are you going to do? Rent a Blockbuster tape and watch that over and over? There was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So I can imagine, I mean, it all makes sense that people are lonelier than ever. But I think also when you're lonely, you kind of talk yourself into the fact that it's okay. You don't need anybody. You're comfortable that way. And your brain gets used to that and says, this is the normal. And when you go out and socialize, you become tired of that. And even like people in their 20s, I've heard that people in their 20s, like a lot of them don't even go out and party that much these days. A lot of them are just like comfortable going back to their home and playing a video game or watching TV or something. So it's interesting how it's a bit of a loop. It's like loneliness is a bad thing, but I'm used to it, so it's okay. And then you're just stuck in
Yes.
this loop and you feel like maybe you don't need that connection anymore.
Yes, no, I think there's also some truth behind it. I mean, for instance, also when you ask people how much time they want to spend with their partner, how much quality time they need with their partner, there would be more people now than before that would say, oh, actually, I'm quite independent. I don't need so much time with my partner. And then you're like, oh, but actually a relationship works different. You spend a lot of time with your partner, but nowadays there's many more people than before that would be also more independent in the relationship. So I think this is exactly also this phenomenon that you were talking about.
It's interesting though, because people do move in together at a certain point and then you spend all your time with someone. And yet
Yes,
I feel like independence is a wonderful thing. And I think we talk a lot about independence when it comes to countries like Switzerland or Germany, and especially when it comes to Scandinavia. Independence is such a key quality. Kids are raised to be self-sufficient, independent, not to rely on anyone. And I think that's wonderful. However, I do think in a partnership, you cannot expect someone to be too independent. I mean, there's a
exactly.
relationship and you need to, there's a point in being together is that you want to feel like you're connected to someone. Um, do you feel like for Swiss people, uh, it's a struggle to, on the one hand, keep that independence, but at the same time, have a partner and have that relationship? Have you noticed this through talking to people?
So I think actually once they are in the relationship, they are very, very close. So then they can be very close. Still, what the majority of people, I would say, they also have healthy relationships. So they can really also really be dependent on their partner. I mean, it can also be small dependence, of course, like emotionally dependent, but then also you can depend, for instance, on your partner because your partner will do the grocery and you will do another household chore, for instance. So it's always this dependence is not bad in relationships. So as long as it's healthy, of course. And I believe that's with people, they are very, very close and they can trust very deeply once they will trust you. They take more time, yes. But once they do trust you, they will trust also very loyal.
So I suppose it takes a while to get
Yes,
to this closeness, but it's well earned because I feel like when people say, I love you, I miss you, I want you too fast, it almost feels like, well, we haven't gotten to that stage yet. And so I think the really positive thing about dating in Switzerland is that once your partner says those words, you know, they've really, really taken the time to consider if you're someone
yes.
that's right for them.
No, that's for sure. So then it really comes genuine and it's really from their heart. So you really know it's right and they will mean it. That's true.
So, speaking of Swiss relationships, you had mentioned that you had kind of a funny anecdote that illustrated what Swiss dating is really like. Could you tell me about it?
Yes, no, of course. Yeah, that was actually last week when I met a Swiss entrepreneur, and then he told me that he has met the girlfriend of his friend, like of his best friend, only after they dated for over 10 months. And then I was like, oh my God, this is like so long. This is like as your friend would have hidden the girlfriend. And I mean, imagine you would be the girlfriend and we wouldn't know the friends or you wouldn't know the family for so long. Maybe you would feel weird as an expat, but for Swiss, it can be totally normal. And it is also a little bit this caution and be cautious and be really take your time until you're really sure about someone. And then you can trust also to introduce them to your friends, your family.
Yeah, so I guess this is the word of advice for any expats that are listening to this, for any foreigners that are dating someone Swiss and they're maybe frustrated about this partner that hasn't yet said, I love you, and it's been a year or it's been longer than a year, and they're thinking of giving up on the relationship. Because I know for a lot of cultures and for a lot of people, myself included, it's incredibly important to hear words of affirmation, which is that someone misses you, someone wants to see you, you know, obviously the big L word. I mean, that can take a lot of time, but I can imagine that for a Swiss person, even just saying, of course, this is person to person. I mean, it can vary definitely within the
Yes,
country, but I think for a lot of people, there's still a bit of, it takes time to even say, you know, literally even like to say any big words, not just I love you. But for someone that comes from a warmer, more reactive, more, you know, more words of affirmation type of culture, it can be difficult because you're not sure if your partners are they like, do they feel this towards me? It's been 10 months. He hasn't introduced me to anyone. Is this a red flag? Should I break up with him? But maybe it's, as you said, like this person, they
yes.
really wanted to make sure. Seems like an extreme case scenario, though. Is this common in Switzerland to wait 10 months to introduce someone?
So yeah, I mean, I guess it also always depends a little bit where the person lives. So how Swiss they actually are. So there might be a difference in the city and the countryside. So of course, on the countryside, they might still be more traditional. So that might take even longer than in the city, where you find more people that are also like influenced from other countries, from other cultures. So also more open-minded, more international-minded. But yes, for Swiss people, he actually also told me it can quite be very typical like that. Yeah.
I mean, you founded your matchmaking agency in Switzerland. Was there a reason why you picked Switzerland, or was it just convenience, or was it that you struggled with the dating scene yourself and you realized, you know what, Switzerland really needs this?
Yes, I mean, I lived here already before, so I really feel home in Switzerland, and I did my studies here and I really grew up in Switzerland. So it was naturally to choose Switzerland for me because I have all my network here. It's really about also because it's so hard to meet people at events or really in a bar. That's why I thought it's a great market as well, or also will really bring benefit to people here.
Exactly, because I can imagine as a foreigner, you obviously don't have a very strong network of people that you can meet your partner through. But even as a Swiss person, let's say you are Swiss and you left Switzerland to go work abroad, and you come back a couple of years later and you've lost half of your friends, and all of a sudden, where are you going to meet your partner? You can't talk to someone offline. Meeting someone online, as you said, is not such a big part of dating, or at least maybe not dating seriously. And what other choice do you really have? Because, you know, if you're seen as a weird person for going up and talking to someone, I mean, it can really limit your experiences. It can limit your yeah, basically you can be, how else are you going to meet people? Basically, there are very
Yes.
few ways to meet people in Switzerland. So for sure, I can see that there's definitely a need for that, especially in a country like Switzerland.
Yes, no, that's for sure. Yeah.
Elena, do you think that in Switzerland, people are seeing marriage as less and less important these days? Or are people still coming to you being like, you know what, I still want to get married. I still want to have that in my life.
I think people in general, they would still be very traditional here and consider marriage as a good institution to really show also that they belong together, to really commit in long term. So I do believe that marriage is still important, in particular also, of course, for people who go to a matchmaker. They usually have also the goal to get married, the relationship goal. There's more people on dating apps that will not prioritize marriage, but for matchmaking, for sure, people would prioritize marriage.
Elena, thank you so much. I have one final question for you.
Yes.
We've kind of touched upon this already, but for a client, or you know, for anyone that's right now listening to this, watching this, and they're looking for love, what would you say is are some qualities, the one quality that they may think is important in a relationship, or in finding that partner, but it's actually not that important? I mean, would you say that it's physical appearance? Would you say that it's how much money they make? I mean, is there anything there that people overestimate when it comes to you know, dating, when it comes to finding a partner?
Yes, I think for sure in general, what they overestimate, of course, is all the superficial criteria. And there, I would say for women, of course, they would overestimate height. I mean, so many women still think that their man needs to be over 180 or over 6 feet tall. So height, I think, is for women like really this criteria where women could be more open-minded. And for men, it is in general, I would say generally looks, that they really focus a little bit less on looks and really have a look more on the person itself and really get to know someone, who they are, really be very interested and curious about the person and really try to understand who you have in front of you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I actually just listened to a podcast a couple of days ago. And it said that, I don't know if you've listened to the same one, but it said that they did a study on two sets of married couples, and they asked them on the first date, how do they feel about each other? One set of couples said, "Yeah, I'm not really sure about this person. Let's give it a go." And the other said, "Oh my God, I'm so attracted to them. Like, I'm so excited." 20 years later, they asked these couples again, which ones were still together, which ones were married, which ones broke up. And the ones that were the most excited about the relationship, or the ones that stayed together for 20 years, were actually the ones that were a little bit lukewarm. And what's interesting is that they changed their answers. They said, no, I knew right away that this person was the one, even though on the first day they were totally lukewarm about each other. And the second set of couples said, no, I knew right away it wasn't the person for me. So we also changed the story we tell ourselves, right? Like, if
Yes.
it all works out, I think people also like overestimate in a way, like the story of how they met. Oh, it needs to be this meet cute. We knocked, like we met in the supermarket. He dropped something, she dropped something. Like, who cares? At the end of the day, you're just looking to to
Yes,
really meet someone that aligns with who you are, right? Whether you go through dating app or matchmaking agency, who cares how you met? I
that's
mean, I
true.
met my ex-boyfriend in the most beautiful way possible, and we broke up. And now, I mean, cool, I have that story, but that doesn't mean that the relationship lasted. So I think we can always, I mean, as long as we meet someone, I think that's the most important goal, is to meet someone that you want to spend the rest of your life with. I think people really underestimate that and overestimate a lot of the other qualities. And yeah, I think it's definitely a difficult time for people, because there's just so much advice being thrown our way when it comes to finding love, and finding a connection. We don't know what to listen to, and because we're on social media so much, we let all of this get to our head, and it's just a lot of noise. Um, and I think that's a really great advice for anyone that's trying to find love, trying to find a partner, is that, yeah, I think, stop listening to all of this. This man needs to be 6'1" or whatever. I mean, all of that is great, but at the end of the day, that's not going to make you more attracted to him down the road. Like, all the other qualities
Absolutely.
will be, right? Yeah. And what would you say? I mean, is there any one advice that you can give to anyone that is looking for love these days?
Yes, of course. I would always say, really, also, first of all, really focus also on yourself. So, really also love yourself, because if you want someone else to love you, you also need to love yourself. So, really be kind to you. I mean, it really starts also, for instance, with healthy food choices. So, really also, or do something that you really like, that you enjoy, listen to music that you like. So, really be happy with yourself and really love yourself, be kind to yourself. And I believe then it's much easier also to find the person you're really looking for.
Yeah, I love that advice. Thank you, Elena. Thank you for taking part in the podcast. And I'm going to link to, I mean, all your socials, and obviously also your agency, if people want to come to you for advice. Are people able to work with you if they live in another country? Do you do Zoom calls, or how does it work?
Yes, we always do that. So we also have a wide network also in other countries. I mean, first of all, of course, in Europe, but then I also even have clients for whom I look for matches in the US. So it can also really be international. And also, in particular, in the coaching, we do a lot with Zoom calls. So they can always come to us, of course. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to link all of that wherever you guys are listening or watching. Elena, once again, thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much, Marina.